Recording in progress.
Committee meeting for March 22nd, 2022 to order. If you'd please call the roll.
Malinowski.
Here.
McBride. Livingston. Here. Joe Walker.
Present.
Here. McBride present. We have a quorum.
Okay, next item, number 2A, approval of the minutes for February 22nd, 2022. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Carrillo?
Malinowski.
Yes.
McBride. Yes. Livingston.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Mackey. Yes. Motion approved.
Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Any changes, additions, or deletions from anyone?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Got a motion in a second. Ms. Carrillo?
Malinowski.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey. Yes. Motion approved.
Item number 4, items for action. 4A, Emergency Services, Emergency Management Division, Hazard Mitigation Plan Resolution, pages 11 to 14. Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. If you turn to page 12 of your agenda packet, you will see under strategic and general discussion that every 5 years, Richland County has to go through a process which includes 4 Midland counties and the Central Midlands region of South Carolina to review, update, and approve a joint all natural hazards risk and mitigation plan. And it is important that we approve this plan because updating this plan addresses the threat to natural hazards that they pose to people in the property. And also it allows us to seek funding associated with those hazards. So we're asking that the council through this committee adopt this plan, and not adopting this plan certainly hinders our ability to seek funding associated with the mitigation of these types of hazards. So staff's recommendation is for the adoption, the acceptance and adoption of this plan. We do have Mr. Espinoza as well as Director Bird here if there are specific questions related to this process or to the plan.
Chair.
Yes, Ms. McBride.
I move for approval of the plan. Approve and adoption of the plan.
Got a motion. Do I hear a second? And a second. Discussion. I've got a couple questions, Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir.
Page 13 of the agenda, it says that it refers to it under the alternatives, number one, that this is the updated joint Central Midlands plan. So is the plan, the updated plan, being written in conjunction with everyone, or is one group in charge of writing this?
If you don't mind, Mr. Panowski, I'll ask Mr. Espinoza to come down so we can address the specifics of that question.
Espinoza, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When it comes to your question, was it created by one entity or jointly with?
Yeah, was this something that just Richland County wrote it all out, or did everybody sit down at a meeting and all the thoughts were put together and then the COG wrote it, or who?
So primarily, the Central Midlands Council of Governments, we're the stewards of the plan, and we contracted a consultant that is a nationwide specialist when it comes to hazard mitigation analysis. But when it comes to Richland County, we reach out and work with any stakeholder that works in the plan, be it the Richland County Emergency Management Services or any other jurisdiction that is a participant. So they review the plan.
Okay. And it's stated in our agenda that the file is too large to attach and directed us to a link. Now, are the changes too large to enumerate and attach? Could we possibly just get a list of the changes?
Yes, we have that list. We do have a compressed version of the plan that is
I just want the changes. I don't need the whole plan. I don't, unless somebody else wants it.
Mostly they were upgrades. Like since time has passed, we were able to refine the analysis to a smaller study area. So before it was like almost square mile per analysis hex that goes into the plan. Now we were able to reduce the area to a quarter mile size and provide more information down to that level. So we also have some other metrics that we included in the plan that were not there before, but I can provide that list to the council.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if you would do that. Also in the resolution, page 14, for anyone that has this agenda, 1, 2, 3, the fourth whereas. It says, whereas Richland County participated jointly in the planning process with the other units of government in the Central Midlands region. I'd really like to see the other units of government listed here so we know who they are. Not that later on somebody says, well, Blythewood, you participated, and they'd say, no, we didn't. I just think that I want everybody to know who's responsible for this update. Is that okay with my colleagues? Okay.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
All right. If so, I've got no other questions or comments, and we're to vote on this resolution. We've got a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. Ms. Carrillo.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey. Yes. Motion approved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Item 4B, Emergency Services, Fire Division, Notification of Fire Intergovernmental Agreement expiration in 2023.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This item is really before the body just to communicate, as we had talked about, trying to bring items in advance before they expire with several months options for us to consider. So all it is reminding you that we do have an agreement with the Columbia Richland Fire Department and joint with the city of Columbia, and based off of the time frame of that agreement, that the expiration of that agreement will be coming in this next year. So as we think about what we might want to do with that, there are certainly some alternatives which are listed on page 16. Those include, they're not limited, but they include renewing the existing IGA. I can tell you in conversations that I've had with the city manager that in general, there are some things about the IGA that we both would probably need to reconsider going forward. Draft a new IGA, that would probably be something that I would think would be the most reasonable, given the fact that we both agree that the existing IGA needs to be changed in some shape, form, or fashion. And certainly there's an opportunity for council to consider other alternatives other than if you did not want to continue with the joint relationship with the Columbia Richland Fire Department. That's something we would need to know and look at alternatives to that. But again, there are no decisions that we're asking you to make today. This is designed to give you advance notice of an expiring agreement and to give you an opportunity to be thinking about if there is some guidance or direction you want staff to take concerning the IGA that we have with the Columbia Richland Fire Department so that we can make those necessary steps.
Administrator Brown, any questions from anyone or comments? Administrator Brown, I hope that these three alternatives, that we get some details on them in plenty of advance notice for the full council to review and this committee for when it comes back to us, so that we've got some details well in advance of this January 23 expiration date. Also, I don't think it would hurt if Director Byrd provided a synopsis of what previously took place. Other than Councilman Livingston and myself, I don't believe anybody is aware of potential problems that there were before and potential alternatives that were given. And I think it would help if everyone was made aware of that. Okay, other than that, we're just accepting this as information, and we'll move on with item 4C.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
On that item, would it be appropriate for the next time this item is before the committee to have that kind of be the historical look, and then to not be back on the committee again until we come back with details about the options? Does that sound like something that the committee would think is a good next step?
That's fine with me, and I think when we do the historical look, we may need to consider executive session for some of the items that I know had previously been discussed, because it is a contractual matter. Okay?
Thank you.
Fine. Item number 4C, Administrator's Office, Federal Certifying Officer and Environmental Officer, pages 36 to 47. Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I'm going to actually have ACA Jensen address this. He brought this to my attention, and so I would like for him to give you a little bit of more in-depth knowledge about why we're asking you to take this action to approve the attached resolution that designates a certifying officer and an environmental officer for Richland County in compliance with the related federal laws and regulations.
Mr. Chair, if I may be recognized.
Jensen, go ahead.
Thank you. ACA Jensen for the record. Very briefly, HUD as well as other federal agencies require an environmental review for the majority of projects. And as part of that process, the county must have a designated certifying officer and a designated environmental officer. And HUD has very specific criteria as to who those persons can be and how it must be accomplished. It must be accomplished by resolution, and the certifying officer must be either the chair of the committee or the mayor. In other words, the CEO or or it can be the chief administrative officer or a designee specifically of the council, but they want somebody who can be held responsible for an environmental process to confirm that it actually is accomplished. The other person is somebody who is a technical expert in environmental review, whether a planner or an engineer. And so typically they're not the same person. In fact, they recommend that it not be the same person, that one be again an official and that one be an expert technically in the field. So the recommendation is that you appoint Mr. Brown as the chief administrator or his designated assistant county administrator as the environmental certifying officer, and that we allow a designated technical person of Mr. Brown's choosing to be the environmental officer for the county.
Questions, comments? I've got one, and that is in our information, ACA Jensen, regarding the certifying officer. It states that the function may not be assumed by administering agencies or consultant. Does that also hold true for the environmental officer?
It does not. Thank you again, ACA Jensen, for the record. Typically, the environmental officer will be a third party or will be an in-house expert on the field. So no, it does not.
Right, because it says here we don't have anybody with those qualifications and we'll have to get a consultant in. I just want to make sure
Yes,
we're within the rules on that.
yes, we are. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on this one, which is to appoint the administrator as the certifying officer, who will then appoint an environmental officer as he sees fit.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. There's no other discussion. Hold on, Administrator Brown.
The only thing I would ask, Mr. Malinowski, is that you do allow it to be me or my designee rather than it having to be just me. Staff is recommending that this person be the.
I'm fine with that. That's what the recommendation was. Okay, so that's what the motion is for. And the second, the administrator or his designee. And then they, one or the other, will appoint the other person. Okay, Ms. Carrillo.
Malinowski.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item number 4D, Administrator's Office, the Palmetto Lifeline request on pages 48 to 51 of our agenda. Administrator Brown?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. You may remember this item was first introduced as a part of the County Administrator's Report, and now has been brought to the committee, seeking some direction as to how you would like for us to proceed. The letter that's included in the packet on page 51 communicates from Palmetto Lifeline the request for Richland County to donate the 50% of the facility in which it helped to purchase to Palmetto Lifeline. The staff does not anticipate that this will require any ongoing operational funding, but we wanted to find out from this body, how would you like for us to proceed? What additional information you think you may need beyond the request, and the understanding that this is a request for us to cede over our, if you will, 50% ownership in the building so that the Palmetto Lifeline can continue to operate and perform the services that they perform there. As you see in the packet, the county previously invested funding to support this initiative, and now we're just simply being requested to allow the facility to be owned, instead of Richland County owning 50% of that, being owned by Palmetto Lifeline so they can do their work. So at this time, Mr. Chair, just any direction we can get from the committee, we would appreciate it.
Livingston.
I'd like to take a few minutes to provide a little bit of history regarding this particular item. I think it's very important for this body. About 10 years ago, this county had an extremely serious problem in dealing with its homeless pets. At that time, both Richland and Lexington County, there was, at that time I recall, there was some 20,000 homeless pets taken in by Richland and Lexington County during that particular time. And the big concern was about 90% of those pets were being euthanized. And that was a big old concern to citizens in the county. And so we was trying to figure out a way to do something with that. So there were a lot of pet care groups in the community that wanted to step up and try to help make a difference. So the county decided to actually, at that time, made a commitment to gift the money we're talking about now to this particular organization for certain commitments that you see in your packet. Now, unfortunately, that didn't happen because at that time, Lexington County had agreed tentatively to gift theirs too. But what happened, there was to a particular animal group, as I recall, and there was another animal group there also wanted to be a part of it too. So as a result of that, we ended up, instead of gifting it as a grant, we just gave it as we did, as not being a grant, and funded the way we did. So the original intent was actually to gift the money. And you also see in your packet in terms of what we were asking them to do for us in terms of a number of annual adoptions and so forth. And what have happened, the group had flawlessly succeeded that in terms of the commitment to Richland County and our animal care. I'm not sure where we would have been and what we would have done without that particular support. I recall, I think Lexington County just recently did a facility, I think similar to Palmetto, and I think it I forget what the facility cost, but I mean, it was like in the millions of dollars, and we probably would have ended up in the same situation. I mean, and several millions of dollars. So I think to allow this group to continue to do what they're doing, to provide the surgeries and stop the euthanasia of many animals, spayed and neutered, wonderful things they're doing, so we won't have to worry about it. And in this case, it doesn't cost you anything too, because I think the request is simply to give the funds that we originally thought about giving, so it wouldn't affect our county budget at this particular time. So I just want to provide that history and be happy to answer any questions. And I think the person who originally engaged and involved in that was Ms. Denise Wilkinson, who's the head of the organization now, and Mr. Stuart Mungo, and they're present here too. But I just wanted to give you that update because that was a tremendous benefit to our county at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. I've got a couple questions. I don't know who will answer them. Maybe Mr. Livingston will. And that is 50%, and maybe Mr. Mungo even, 50% of this building is owned by Lexington County and 50% by Richland County. Has Lexington County agreed to give their portion of the building also to Palmetto?
I can find out that answer, Mr. Chair, but I don't have it tonight.
Well,
if the committee has no objection, I believe Mr. Stuart Mungo, and I see Denise is with him, one or both of them could give us some of these answers. If you just state your name and position, and then go ahead.
My name is Denise Wilkinson. I'm the CEO of Palmetto Lifeline. We have not approached Lexington County yet. We wanted to come before Richland County first. We did come to you in the very beginning, as Mr. Livingston said, and asked for the grant. I also want to say that we are very, very proud of the partnership that we have with y'all, and it has been extremely successful to this day. I have other organizations around the country calling me and saying, how did you do this? We'd like to replicate what you're doing. The building is 10 years old. We bring thousands and thousands of animals to that building every single year. There's been a lot of damage. We have epoxy floors, epoxy walls. We would like to look at putting solar panels on the building. So there's a lot of upgrading that we need to do to the facility, and we anticipated that y'all probably did not want us to come back to you for additional funding because it will be very expensive. We are willing to take that on because we want to continue with the work that we're doing in the community.
Thank you. Another question I have is, I don't recall back then, but was there some type of a memorandum of understanding between the county and Palmetto Lifeline, number one? Number two, is there an intergovernmental agreement with Lexington and Richland County over this?
There is an agreement, and there were certain things that we had to achieve annually. Right. We have exceeded those every year. We put up $1 million in cash the day that we signed the agreement with both counties. We put an additional $500,000 up to upfit the building, and we agreed not to own any part of the building at that time.
Okay, and Administrator Brown, since this is a facility that is owned 50% by Richland County, and we've supposedly got a list of county properties that we own, is this one on that list?
I have to take a look at that, Mr. Malinowski. I'm not sure since it's a 50% ownership, but I could find out.
Right, because then we're not selling it, but we'd be giving it, but I want to make sure it's done in accordance with our guidelines for disposal of property.
Yes, sir. I think that makes sense. And I think in this particular situation where you had an item that was kind of preceded that agreement, you might be okay, but I understand we can just go back and see in that process what it takes. But just given the nature of this one, you might be able to address that differently since the policy that you have now wasn't in place at the time and when you made those agreements. But I'll provide that information to you.
Okay, well, right now we only have a recommendation from staff. I would like to make a motion that the information that's been requested be reviewed by administration and legal regarding IGAs or MOUs and provided to council with your opinions on that we're not in violation of anything, and pending that information being provided that we and Lexington County agreeing to give their half also, that we move forward with the donation of this building. That's my motion.
I'll second your motion.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Livingston.
I'll get some clarification on the motion. Now the motion is to move forward to council, continue to put that information.
Well, yeah, I don't want to hold this up. If they need repairs and all, we need to get it to them so they can begin now. So the motion is to move it forward to council with that information included.
You got plenty. I maintain my second.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph Walker. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Carrillo?
Malinowski.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilkerson. Okay, item number 4E, Richland County Utilities willingness to serve letter for Savannah Wood amenity, tax map serial number R21900-6-14, pages 52 to 56. Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Malinowski, members of the committee. What you have before you is our standard willingness to serve letter. Anytime someone approaches Richland County Utilities and requests for a service, we look at our capacity, and based off whether or not there is capacity, we will then issue that willingness to serve. We bring that willingness to serve process through the committee so that you are aware of the information that we are receiving, but that is the regular process to determine whether or not we will serve an individual who is requesting for a capacity. So what you have before you right now is staff saying that we have capacity for this request and having the committee then weigh in on whether or not we will extend that willingness to serve. With that being said, Mr. Chair, I asked Mr. Bill Davis if there are any questions to address those to the committee, but that's the process for the willingness to serve letters.
Okay, now, prior to our committee meeting, I was asked about this willingness to serve letter, and there was some question as to what it actually did and what it meant. If we still have that question after the administrator's explanation, please, let's ask it now. We're good? Okay, we got a question, Ms. Mackey.
Yes, thank you. Just for, I guess, clarification. So is this an extension of the sewer line? Or what exactly does that mean?
So I'll certainly have Mr. Davis speak to it from a technical standpoint, and I'll try to explain it in a way that I understand it. So if someone comes to Richland County and says, I would like to utilize and tap into the sewer availability. We say, for example, we have 10 available taps. If the person that's requesting those taps needs 5, then the process would proceed in saying, basically we have 5 taps available. You only requested 5. We would then come to the committee and say, we are requesting to submit this willingness to serve letter to notify the individual that we do have 5 taps that they could utilize, and we are willing to serve them with those 5 taps based on our capacity. If that same individual asked for 15 and we only had the 10, then we would not be able to serve 15 because it would be beyond our capacity. So part of this process is really based off what our capacity is. And it's almost a ministerial process because of what we're dealing with, but it is a process that we do have to bring and communicate and take through those channels. I hope that answered your question.
It did. I just wanted to, so we have this area now where they're submitting the willingness to serve, and we're saying that the sewer infrastructure is already there, and we're just giving them access to a tap. Is that correct?
What's already there. We would not be creating something new, because if we didn't have it, then we would not be willing to serve because there would be no capacity.
And sorry, just one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
And when doing this, is, I guess, would the time frame in which someone may come and request this, is it typically at the beginning when they've actually submitted other plans, or is this just happen along the way as they're working to develop?
Now, that process, I think, can take different turns. I'm going to have Mr. Davis speak to, when people typically do that. I don't think there is a specific time frame in the process that they have to do that as compared to any other time. Mr. Davis?
Mr. Chair, I may.
Mr. Davis, you may, but let me direct my colleagues to page 55 of our agenda, the last two paragraphs where it says upon council approval, they can proceed. And then the next one about the availability is valid for. Go ahead, Director Davis.
That was an excellent explanation by the administrator. For the record, this is Bill Davis, Utility Director. The only thing I would like to add to that is when a piece of property is available, the driving factor for, I don't know why I'm getting their feedback. The driving factor for these letters, did I do something? Okay. I'm not that tall, so I don't know what happened. So the driving factor for these letters is a lot of times to try to get that real estate sold. So in order to sell real estate, a lot of times there is a requirement to have that guarantee that there is sewer and water available. And that's one of the driving factors. The second factor is exactly what Mr. Brown said. If we don't have capacity, then we don't issue that letter. So if you submit a letter, a request for a piece of property, you get one of two answers. We don't have capacity, or we're willing to serve and we issue that letter. It's that simple.
Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Barron.
So I just want to insert here, as I spoke to the chair earlier about this, and oftentimes we enter a conversation, and it is, well, you remember when, or are you familiar with? And we get information with very little background information, and so it would be helpful, especially I'll speak for me as a new council member. It would be helpful to have some backstory, some information, so that we can then make an informed decision. If I'd not talked to Mr. Malinowski before the meeting, I would have had, the reason why I stayed for this committee meeting is because I had lots of questions about willingness to serve. And that was not, the backstory was not provided for us in our briefing document. So if we could, especially with certain items, if we could just get a little bit more information with historical data, just like what Mr. Livingston provided for us earlier, it's very helpful for us to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Bo Walker.
Recognize, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And perhaps you can answer this question, Mr. Brown, or perhaps Mr. Davis can answer this question. So this is not really a request for an expansion of sewer service, right? This is
Correct.
a request to approve, I guess.
Staff to serve.
Right, correct. So pretty much the tap's already there. And so this is a request to approve, I guess, the request to, if you will, use the taps that are there currently, right?
Right.
If I'm asking it correctly.
Yeah, in essence, yes, sir. What we're asking you as staff is that we've identified that there are available taps and that they meet the request that is before you. And so now we're asking you to allow us to go forward with extending the use of these taps to whoever the requester is.
And the reason I asked that question, Mr. Brown, because what I read in the media, it gives the impression that this is an expansion of sewer services. And as a result of that, we have this massive development that's following, but this is not an expansion of services, but rather approval to use what's there.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Technically, yes, sir.
Okay.
I think it's very possible, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the media that gave that information, that maybe they were excited because Richland County has expanded its sewer service, right? This Richland County Council approved the Utilities Department to utilize funding to bring sewer service to a community that had been without. And we're seeking more funding from the state to do the same thing. So maybe they kind of conflated the two issues. and took it that this was an expansion, but this is exactly what you just described. The available capacity is there, and someone is asking to tap into that capacity, and that's what the willingness to serve represents.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Ms. McBride.
It's just for clarification. If, based on the example you gave, you've got 10 areas, 10 places they can tap into, and there may be 20 needs from different entities, right? So is there a competitive process, or is there a process to determine who gets to tap, or does it come, first serve?
It is first come, first serve, and to Ms. Barron's point, so let me give you just a little bit extra information. I know you didn't ask this question, but one of the things that we certainly heard, and I heard this as soon as I got here almost, is that there are folks who have been waiting on taps for decades. And so those individuals may be some of the same ones who are now saying that once the services were provided and the capacity was available, that they're asking for it because they've been waiting for it to become available. And so again, I think maybe that's probably some of the information shared that maybe the folks who were sharing it with you in the media were pulling from, but it's not new to what Mr. Overture Walker said. And it is in fact a first come, first serve based off availability. So if you ask before me and you ask for all the taps and they're all available, there is nothing that allows Mr. Bill Davis or myself as the county administrator to say you can't have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride. Director Davis, you have something else to add? If not, I got a question for you.
I just wanted,
Go ahead.
yes, sir, if I could, just to add to your question a little bit, that was exactly right, but we do have a limit. So if someone asks for all of the capacity, they have to show us a plan in which they plan to build that within 1 year, or to resubmit that for construction within 1 year. The letter's only good for 12 months, and then we can take it back.
That's where my question is leading, Director Davis. If the letter is good for 12 months, we tell them that in the letter. However, what happens, and that means they got 12 months to get their act together and get their development going. But what happens if somebody else comes in prior to that 12 months and they're a whole lot more ready to go than this company that requested it? 12 months goes by and they just say, nah, never mind, we can't do it. We don't want to do it. Yet we had somebody else 6 months prior to that that did have everything ready to go and did want to go. And now they've said, well, forget it. We didn't want to wait either. Is there anything we can put in the letter that would say, you know, within so many days, if you're not providing us something, you know, another request showing more readiness could preclude yours?
We certainly could add to the processes, but I think one of the things would be that the property got sold. You know, that's one of the first steps. If the property is going to be sold to a developer, that's a positive sign that it's actually moving forward. My
concern with this is we're telling somebody you got 12 months, and in the 11th month they say change our mind. But 6 months prior to that, somebody was ready to go, had their mind set, and they were going to do it, and we've now lost them also.
It's like you're saying, they don't have any skin in the game.
Right.
Right. I mean, so that they don't, and we have no ability at this time to stop that.
Okay. Thank you. Talking about the media, I also read an article that indicated the committee will approve the particular sewer service to these potential developments. But that is not true. The media needs to know that this committee, after vetting different information and situations, recommends to the full council what they think the council should do. And it is the full council that gives the final approval for either saying yay or nay to providing the sewer service, not the committee. That is all. Okay. Any other discussion, comments? Nothing? Hearing none. Ms. Carrillo.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
We get one? Well, then let's have a
All
motion.
right, motion to
We have a
approve.
motion.
We got a motion to approve it. Do I hear a
We
second?
doing all this discussion.
Yeah.
I move to approve.
All right, we got a motion and a second. And now, Ms. Carell, if you'll take the vote, please.
Mr. Chair, we're on item F.
Now, we've got more.
I
We
mean,
discussed this one. Let's finish
We
the
doing
vote
all
on.
of them, are they not-
I'm going to after we do this one, if, you know. If everybody's fine with all of them, that's, I was kind of looking at that. That we can also do, we can do E, F, G, H, I, and J.
Staff is recommending all of them, correct? Because that's why I'm saying just do them all.
Yeah. All right, so do I have a motion for all of them?
I move for approval.
moved.
All right, Mr. Joe Walker has moved for it,
Second.
and a second. No additional discussion. Now, Ms. Carrillo.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, there are only two other items on here under number 5, items pending analysis, no action required. If no one has any questions on those, the fact that there's no action required, and you can see what staff has provided us for informational purposes, I'll move to item number 6, which is to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
In a second. Thank you. Ms. Carrillo.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.